99.99% of the predictions that human being had in the history about the future, all wrong.
Including that one?
Smoke weed every day.
SpaceX started off with the Falcon 1 rocket, which even after failing 3 times in a row, did a successful 4th launch, thanks to this man.
I don't ever give up.
It has the most powerful operational rocket, the Falcon Heavy, which shoots out 5.5 million pounds of thrust out of its ass. And when I say operational, it's because we already had a Saturn V rocket which did 7.5 million pounds of thrust. And upcoming rockets such as SLS and the BFR. But in between those monsters is the Falcon 9 rocket, the primary workhorse of SpaceX at the moment, which does basically all the launches for the company. Satellites such as its own Starlink and other communication agencies, cargo resupply missions to the space station, and soon crew transport are all performed by this monster with 9 Merlin 1D engines, each shooting out 900 kilonewtons of force using its RP-1 and liquid oxygen fuel mix. As for the rocket itself, it's 70 meters high and can deliver 22 tons of payload to the low Earth orbit in its expendable configuration. Why is it a money printing machine though? Well, for starters, the price tag for you to launch your payload to SpaceX via this rocket is about $60 million. Isn't that like a lot of money? Like literally 1,500 Cybertrucks amount of money? Well, for the same mission by any other company or agency would cost you upwards of $200 to $400 million per launch. That's not a small difference. That's a difference of over another 9,000 Cybertrucks. So how does SpaceX still manage to make cash if it's so cheap? That is because the Falcon 9 is not your average orbital class vehicle. It is way more than that. First, the technology it uses makes it cheaper to produce, at just about $50 million a piece, which already gives SpaceX the $10 million extra cash revenue. Wait, so how 50 million you say? Well, that's a rough estimate considering the first stage being
Sort of on the order of $30 to $35 million.
the fairing being $6 million, and the second stage being roughly another $10 million. You might think that since most of these rockets' mass is fuel, the kerosene and oxygen needed must be costing a kidney and a half. Well, they only account for 0.3% of the total cost, which comes out to be roughly $200,000. Well, the story would end here with SpaceX making about $10 million every launch. But guess what? The entire first stage booster returns back to Earth. That's a bag of $30 million cash returning safely to the launch pad. That plus the recent fairing catches, adding another $3 to $6 million, makes the Falcon 9 rocket the most economical orbital class vehicle of all time. Musk had the plans to retrieve the second stage, but instead focused all his R&D on the Starship, Starlink, and the other programs, since it would be feasible to let some second stages burn up in the atmosphere, since a couple years from now, the company will be entirely shifting to its BFR system, which will have a fully reusable configuration. Though that monstrosity is another story. Anyways, that means that it cost SpaceX roughly $20 million Of course, we have to consider some refurbishment and the staff's salary because it's not yet fully ready to go reusable like an airplane. Yet. Now I might stick out the point that this is relative to the payload. For example, we have the Indian PSLV rocket which takes just $15 million to launch, but it can only do 3 to 4 tons into orbit. Anyways, nothing comes close or nearly as cool as seeing a rocket landing on a frickin' drone ship in the middle of the sea.